Evening. I'm Joe Rastusha, and on behalf of the entire LIFT team, we welcome you to tonight's convening, Voices from the Field. We are very excited to bring you three groups of educators who are working to bring trauma-sensitive practice into their schools to create safe and supportive trauma-sensitive schools. We will hear from all the groups before our Q&A session, and ask that you either post your questions in the chat, noting which group they are directed at, or if you prefer, you can wait until the Q&A session will occur at the end of all three presentations. We want to thank our presenters for taking the time to share their work with us this evening, and also thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us tonight. We're going to start with Mary, Kate, and Linda from Weymouth High School, who will share their work to bring trauma-sensitive practice to their school. Mary, Kate, and Linda, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mary Stephanie, and as Joe said, I'm here with Kate McDonald and Linda Drew. We are from Weymouth High School. Weymouth, Massachusetts is an oceanside community on the northeast coast of the United States, just south of the city of Boston and about 4 hours northeast of New York City. We have a very diverse community here of just over 57,000 people. This diversity can be seen in many areas, but two of the biggest are our varied ethnic groups and our differing socioeconomic groups. 16% of the households in Weymouth speak a first language other than English in their homes. And our student community here at Weymouth High School represents over 39 countries and 4 territories throughout the world. This is the current data from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which is our governing body for schools here in Massachusetts. Over 40% of the students here at Weymouth High are considered high needs. Our school is above the state average for students with disabilities, and we are close to the state average for students who are economically disadvantaged. These numbers of high need students can also appear to disproportionately affect the seemingly small class size average due to the number of sub-separate classes we have for students with IEPs. As you can see from this data, Weymouth is a diverse city, and our nearly 2,000 students here at Weymouth High School are coming to the building each day with very different backgrounds and very different needs, which is why the work we are doing here in our community is so incredibly important.
Prior to COVID, we were experiencing ongoing issues that included poor culture, lack of student engagement, increased behavioral issues, poor student achievement, and staff turnover. COVID really magnified these problems. All of us were feeling isolated, unprepared, worried about our students, our own families, and ourselves. And this really compounded what was happening in our building. So when Course 1 came along, it was really perfect timing. We had just finished our first year back from lockdown and hybrid. It was incredibly challenging. We were feeling drained and a bit like what just happened. We looked at LIFTs as the opportunity we needed to regain a sense of control about our own practice, our own classrooms, and our relationships with students and staff. We quickly came to see, though, that this work was about more than just that. It really is about our entire school community. So 2 of the most wonderful things about the LIFTS courses that aided in our success are, 1, it helped us develop language we needed to begin to have conversations about this work. And 2, it's that we were required to put into practice or complete assignments that we could put into practice in our school. So while this was a little bit overwhelming and honestly a little bit uncomfortable, this idea that we could be agents of change, our instructor, Lindsay Jacobs, introduced us to and consistently reminded us of the phrase, small is the new big. This simple phrase kept us focused on targeting small areas that had the potential to create big change in our school. And as we began the work, we found it was being well received by our administrators and that we had more support than we thought we would. We're now going to highlight a few of the steps that we took along the way.
I'm going to take you through this slide and the next, describing 2 things we've done to help our school move toward implementing trauma-informed education. We researched relationship mapping during our LIFTS coursework. Harvard University's Graduate School of Education has laid the foundation for this practice. At the heart of this practice is the understanding that positive, stable relationships are the key components to student success and well-being. This activity is designed to help make sure each student has a strong connection with someone in the building. And keeping with small is the new big, we decided to launch it with our 9th grade class. These are the students who are new to Weymouth High School. We felt this could be very impactful. Implementation has been challenging, but we're learning so much along the way. Last year, we got a late start, too late to have it have much of an impact, but we revised and adjusted and strategized. And this year, we just launched relationship mapping to coincide with the end of our first quarter. It's early to make predictions about how this will go, but we understand that this is a learning process, and we know we will get better as we continue on this journey. Next, we wanted to create a product that would help support educators in our community as together we move toward a trauma lens. Having a central hub with resources felt like a good idea, so we created a website. It's still a work in progress, and now that more educators in our district have taken LIFT's courses, we can add their ideas too. There's a link in the slide if anyone wants to check it out. The link includes Trauma 101, an FAQs page, a page highlighting student perspectives, and a page filled with classroom and educator resources. I'm going to hand it back to Kate, who's going to provide an overview of our progress as we moved into last summer and course 4 through LIFT.
Perhaps one of the most important aspects of our work has focused on a shift in thinking for staff. To do this, we started with our administration. We presented an overview about trauma sensitivity to them in May of 2022, and were then asked to present to our staff about our work with LIFTs. We presented to them at the end of May and surveyed them immediately after the professional development. We asked 3 questions. We wanted to know, 1, what was their biggest takeaway from the presentation? 2, what did they see as roadblocks to implementing this work? And 3, where could we apply this work in our school? We weren't really sure how this was going to go, but as results came in, we were happily surprised by the honesty with which our staff responded and the seriousness with which they took the information. The biggest takeaway was that staff did not know really what trauma is. They identified their biggest roadblock to implementation as themselves or other staff getting in the way of the work. And almost all respondents stated everywhere when identifying where we could apply trauma-sensitive practices in our building. So we were encouraged. We had a finger on the pulse for the first time and used this information to aid us in course 4. We were able to create a much more detailed survey that gave us some unexpected results. So as we began to work for course 4, we decided we wanted to dig a little bit deeper and gain an understanding of where staff were landing as it relates to relationships, general knowledge about trauma-sensitive practice and engagement. So we created a survey targeting these areas. We were amazed that we had such a high response rate. Keep in mind, we rolled this out in the middle of the summer after another very challenging year, and we never expected that so many of our staff would respond. We really felt it was indicative of a desire for change.
So as Kate mentioned, part of what we were looking to learn from the faculty and staff was what they already knew or what they thought they already knew about the components of a safe and supportive school. Seen here are 2 of the key questions that we asked to try and find that knowledge. Which of the following are components of safe and supportive school learning environments, and which of the following might be outcomes of implementing safe trauma-sensitive strategies here at Weymouth High School? We were so encouraged by some of the responses, including that 96% of respondents selected predictable and safe environments as a component of a safe and supportive school and learning environment. We could, however, also see that there might be some learning gaps in understanding, as nearly 46% of respondents stated that knowing all of a student's psychosocial history is also a key component of a safe and supportive learning environment. Now, think about that for a moment and think about whether any of us would want all of our colleagues knowing all of our own personal trauma history, for that all that information to be out there. Do we really need to know somebody's full history to be able to teach them or treat them with a trauma-sensitive lens? This is the work that we have to do to shift mindsets within our own school communities.
Because we know that relationships are at the heart of teaching and learning, we wanted to know how our staff felt about relationships. How are they going? Has it changed due to the pandemic? Here's what we found out. Overwhelmingly, staff reported that it was easy to build relationships, but more than half of the respondents felt that it had become more difficult during the pandemic. Also not included here, but worth noting, is that about 30% of staff felt their relationships with their colleagues had been negatively impacted over the past 2 years. All of this points to a need for improved culture and creating action steps to build stronger relationships.
And this slide really speaks for itself. Overwhelmingly, our staff understand that trauma sensitivity can improve school culture and that it should be a priority.
So for Kate, Linda, and I, it's amazing to think that all of this change started only 15 months ago when we took the opportunity that was presented to us by our school district to participate in that very first LIFTS course, which then led the three of us to being part of the first cohort pursuing the 4-course certificate program and the impact of trauma on learning. From there, the momentum has just continued because we've had buy-in from our building administration and district administration as well, and the growing support from all of our colleagues here at the high school. As Joe Restuccia has said to us in meetings, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So we have definitely been putting the work in for our preparation, and we are taking the opportunities that have been presented to us, and we're now using that to enact change here in our very own community here at Weymouth High School. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sal Tarasi. I'm the director of the LIFTS initiative. First, let me thank the folks from Weymouth High School for a very excellent presentation on trauma sensitivity and change focused at the whole school level. And now we'd like to just shift gears a little bit. And it's my pleasure to introduce Tara and Shelley from the Pond Cove Elementary School in Cape Elizabeth, Maine, for a more classroom-based focus as they talk about their initiative on mindfulness in the classroom.
Great. Thank you, Sal, so much. My name is Tara Bucci. I'm going to set up my screen here. Sorry about that. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Pond Cove Elementary School in Cape Elizabeth, Maine. And I worked with Shelley, who is also a teacher at Lyseth Elementary School in Portland, Maine, on our mindfulness in our classroom. I've been teaching for over 20 years, special ed and general ed, and I found that mindfulness has been very beneficial for not only my students, but also myself. Shelley?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Tara. My name is Shelley Haffenreffer, and as Tara mentioned, I work at Lyseth Elementary School in Portland, Maine. This is my first year at Lyseth, working as a special education teacher with K and 1st grade students. Previously, I was with Tara and some of the other teachers at Cape Elizabeth School. Thank you.
Great. We'll begin.
How can we incorporate mindfulness practices in classrooms so children learn this critical life skill? This is something that Tara and I both thought about and talked about. For me, I started to think about working with my students who were classified with behavioral problems and started to bring in mindfulness practice. And I saw a big change. Tara?
Thanks. I was a teacher who had been sort of running life at a very busy pace, not only in my professional life, but also as a mom and a wife. And I realized after a pretty severe accident that I needed to slow myself down. I signed up for a reaching out course through the University of Southern Maine on mindfulness in the classroom with Dr. Nancy Hathaway. And during that time, I learned about using mindfulness in the classroom. A quick Google search helped me find this amazing book that I want to share with you, and it's linked in our website by James Butler. I want to share with you that I did reach out to him, and he gave me permission to share the quotes from the book and the information, and he was ecstatic to hear what we've been doing. In this mindfulness book, it has a very quick and short lessons and social emotional lessons, as well as with mindfulness practices. And the strategies that we focused on, the 5 strategies were mindful breathing, mindful listening, seeing, eating, and stretching for yoga. To begin, each week I start with a mindful meeting on Monday morning. During this time, I address the students and invite them to come to our back carpet area. On the easel, I'll have like a lesson, such as this one on including others. There'll be a script that I'll read to them, and I'll make some notes on the board, such as including others is a form of showing compassion. Have you ever felt left out? How did that feel? What can you do when you see someone else being excluded? After we take time to discuss this among the classroom, I will then write down some of the students' ideas on chart paper. And then I will start to guide them in a guided breathing routine that focuses their thoughts around inclusion. I'm actually going to read right directly from here so you can see too, because it's really important to almost hear what it's like to be invited. Some students will be sitting on the carpet. Some students will be sitting on stools. There may be some students who even are at their desk area and who aren't quite ready to join the group. But eventually I've seen all the students really feel calm and peaceful and join us. So I'll say, sit cross-legged on the floor or comfortably in your chair with your hands on your knees. Relax your shoulders and close your eyes or look down. Inhale slowly through your nose and exhale through your nose. Let's take 5 deep breaths together and think about what we can do if someone's being excluded. Inhale, exhale. Slowly open your eyes or look up after doing the breathing. And would you like to share what you're doing or what you thought about, what you could do if someone's being excluded? I'd invite the students to share.
Thank you, Tara. Again, with mindful stretching, while I was working with students who were considered to be behavioral problems, I started to research trauma and took the courses through Leslie and became certified, and found that trauma stays in our body, it remains in our body. And this brought me to doing intentional stretching and intentional breathing with students, also using mantras. You know, if a student was so dysregulated, you know, once I was able to bring them down a little bit, if they couldn't start their own mantra, I would start it for them. You are safe, you are loved, you are kind. And then they would be able to, you know, follow it through. Again, sometimes it was intentional breathing, and sometimes it was mindful stretching.
As Shelley mentioned, here's a little discussion that we talked about, was really trying to empower the students to know that their bodies are vessels and that we needed to treat them with respect and get our bodies ready for the day. During our research project, we came to the conclusion that mindfulness was definitely benefiting students. And what we did was we surveyed them on their practices. We asked students to share with us about a time they used their mindful strategy. And we also asked them to tell us how it made them feel. We did give them 5 choices to choose from. Next, we asked the children to find the strategy that was most helpful for them, and then asked them to how their strategies and activities would help them achieve their goals. Last, we gave the children an opportunity to share their illustrations of themselves using a mindful strategy or a picture that it illustrated the mindfulness. This was a great opportunity for students to share what they had learned for their practices and how they were using it in their own lives.
Our first question that I asked my kindergarten students at the time, they were asked to tell me about a time when they used mindful strategy. And some of them said, just a couple of quotes, I think of the wind and I look at the clouds. I think about being at home. I remember when I was a baby. I'll remind you that when we were working on this, the students were just coming back from COVID. Some of these kindergarten students had never been to school. They had never made it to preschool. Some of them were, home with parents that were stressed out, and the children were feeling this stress. And they really, really took to this. Some said that they think of their beach, or they close their eyes and they think of color. And I was wondering how it was going to go with 5-year-olds. They totally took to it and loved it. They really embraced it.
Thanks, Shelley. We did the same thing with 4th graders as well. I asked them to tell about a time when they were using their mindful strategies. Many students were able to share that they used mindfulness with their deep breaths for sports. Oftentimes they would take deep breaths before beginning on an activity, for like swimming, to let them know that they were ready to begin, as well as a goalie. One of my students was a hockey player, and he said he always did his mindful breathing and his mantras that he was strong and he was going to keep the goals out of the net. A student shared with us that when she woke from a nightmare, she would practice her breathing exercise and try to focus on what was happening at the moment and not the scary things that were creeping into her mind. So really looking at that self-talk. This was also the time when we were providing vaccines for our students in the school, so in the cafetorium. So one of the things that students shared was that when they got their vaccine, they would say to themselves, it will be quick and it won't hurt. Oftentimes, our students were sharing with us that they were using mindfulness when they were meeting new friends and when we're unsure about their social relationships. Oftentimes, too, students would share with us that they would use mindfulness at home. Lots of students reported that the breathing as well as mindful movement of taking a break or a walk was very helpful among their siblings at home. I thought that was great. So in the end, we found that the kindergartners shared that mindful stretching was the most helpful thing for them. The 4th graders stated that the mindful breathing was the most helpful for them. And even today, when I was talking to my students, they really agree that mindful breathing at the age of 9 and 10 is the most helpful for them.
Thank you, Tara. So the kindergarten students that I worked with, I had them express themselves through drawing. And the first picture is a student who said, when I get nervous, I think of the wind and the clouds. And this is their artwork. The second one, when I am scared, I think of being at home. And the last one, when I get angry, I think of colors inside of a bubble. And, I was really surprised that these students were so into it that they were able to go right into it and draw their pictures in order to express themselves. Again, one student drew a picture of them sleeping. When I'm anxious, I think of sleeping. When I get angry, I think of the beach. Or when I'm sad, I loved this one. When I am sad, I tell myself, I like me. I thought that was just beautiful.
Thanks, Shelley. The 4th graders were really able to not only express themselves verbally in our interviews, but also write their answers. So this was great. So mindfulness helps you take time for your goals. And it says just breathe, and they were doing their tree pose in that one. Mindfulness helps you can say I can do it and build your self-confidence. I thought that was really great. And here's a moment of calming me down when things are tough. Breathe in and breathe out. And some of the things we talked about is actually making visual signs when you're breathing, opening and closing your hands. Students also talked about, this is our hockey player, about mindfulness making you feel focused. So before my championship game, I took 2 deep breaths. And then here's the vaccine, getting the vaccine. When I will be getting my vaccine, it'll be a tiny pinch, but I will be fine. And strategies can help you be focused when you're distracted. As Shelley mentioned, last year was a very unique year. These children had come back after COVID, a year of hybrid school, which was in Cape Elizabeth, 2 days in school, 3 days out. And so it was the first time socially that they were with each other in a classroom setting in a long time, as well as being fully masked. So it was a very different learning environment. Lastly, I think this relates to not only students, but also us as adults, because what I've realized is using the mindfulness in the classroom has also helped me. If you take a deep breath or use a mindful mantra before a test, you will be calm. When you're calm, you're most likely to succeed.
Thank you, Tara. And in conclusion, students are benefiting from the introduction and use of mindfulness practices in the classroom. I hope that it becomes, a daily part of curriculum. I know that here at Lyseth, we are starting to introduce this into some of the classrooms, and it's very successful. So again, mindful breathing, mindful listening, looking, eating, stretching. And oftentimes when I'm working with a dysregulated student, I will take them on a walk and we'll do a mindful looking walk. What colors are you seeing? What artwork are you seeing? If we're outside, trees, green grass. And all the students were able to learn strategies and recall when necessary. Introduction and use of mindful strategies were bonding and created a community within the classroom setting. And I have to say, I really feel that it brought the students closer together. And I know from myself, it's developed a stronger trusting relationship. As teachers, we're practicing alongside our students, and this created a better professional mental well-being and modeled for our students. Students were able to incorporate it in their daily routines and lives at home, as Tara had said. And based on our data and reflections, we feel it necessary to share our results with staff and administrators. Mindful instruction should be at the forefront of education. Our students need it and they deserve it.
We hope you enjoyed this and we'll share this with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you very much to both Tara and to Shelley for sharing a classroom-based intervention initiative with children that gives them skills that they can use in school, in the classroom, and more importantly, in their lives outside the classroom. It gives us great insight into those children, and more importantly, gives them insight into themselves. Now we'll turn our attention away from students and on to teachers. My pleasure to introduce Sarah, Kate, Susan, and Melissa, who will be talking about their work with teacher stress.
Hi, I'm Melissa Baum, and I'm a special education teacher in Cape Elizabeth, Maine. It's right outside of Portland, Maine. And I have the privilege of working with these ladies. Sarah Adams is a classroom teacher. Susan Bahadori is a speech and language pathologist, and Kate Atkinson was working with us, and she moved to a school in Portland Public Schools, but she is a literacy coach. So when we looked at our research, we decided to look at how the pandemic is affecting stress levels in teachers. And we really looked at this because in order to be a trauma sensitive school, we really need to consider the wellness of the staff. Our students are impacted by their education and their educators, who then will set the tone for the school and the environment. We wanted to mention too that we used the word stress purposely instead of trauma because we wanted to get more responses from teachers. People have a hard time admitting to having trauma. And so we decided that stress might be a more manageable term for them. So our demographics were similar from our first survey to our second survey. We surveyed about 81 staff members, all from Pond Cove Elementary School. And each time we got 35 to 36 responses, which is about a 43 to 44% response rate. We did have some limitations. We only interviewed one school. We only gave about a week to answer each of these surveys. And of course, in any school, we had some turnover from one year to the next. So.
All right, I'm going to go through some of our results. Question 1 really got at the heart of what we were trying to research, and that was we were asking our staff about their perceived level of stress that they were experiencing in the workplace. We asked them to rate that level of stress using a 5-point scale, with 1 being what we determined to be completely manageable and 5 being totally overwhelming. You can see on the slide that the top is our initial survey that we did in fall of 2021. We then resurveyed our staff this past fall of 2022. And you can see some of the general trends. Some of our big takeaways is that there was some positives that we saw over the course of the year, that more people were reporting lower levels of stress, that level 1 and 2 in fall of 2020. And we also were able to pull away that the level 4 there was a reduction in that sort of more the higher end of the stress that went down from fall of 2021 to 2022. There were some key takeaways from this slide that we had, and that level 3 that represents more of that moderate went up. So perhaps that's just absorbing from some of that higher levels, but that was a little bit noteworthy. And that the other thing was that the level 5 remained the same, with 3 respondents consistently, whether they're the same people or not, that's a limitation, but there are 3 respondents with that overwhelmed sort of feeling level of stress. The second question that our survey asked is how that stress, if you feel it impacts your ability to do your job well. This is, again, rated on that 1 to 5 scale, again, where the 1 is completely manageable and the 5 is a feeling of being overwhelmed. There were some positives, again, if you look, so just to repeat, the top is a 2021 data, the bottom is a 2022 data. There is a general trend of it moving towards the lower levels, which is a very positive. I should mention that that the number of respondents was pretty consistent between year 1 and year 2, and from 35 in fall of 21 to 36 in this past fall. The other positive is that middle, sort of that moderate range. In last year, there were 16 people at that level. There was a significant reduction in that level down to 7, which is a real positive. But again, a takeaway is if you look at those 2 higher levels, that level 4 and that level 5, which again is at the higher end of the scale, when you compare the 2021, there is 11 respondents that are in that combined range of that 4 and 5, and that actually went up in the 2022 range, 2022 survey, excuse me. So just went up 1, but it was an increase, and there was 1 in the level 5 the first year, where 3 were in the second year. So there is still, in evidence of a high level of stress. There's a new question that we asked in this past fall, and that's when we asked our respondents to do a self-comparison. We asked them, compared to last year, my stress level feels, and we gave them a 3-point scale to ask them. We asked them if they felt higher, the same, or lower. And you can see that a significant amount said lower, But if you do combine the higher or the same, it still ends up with roughly around 52%. So our takeaway is that, although there is some reduction in trend, we can conclude that there is stress on some level that is a factor for the respondents of this survey.
All right, our next question was, in what ways is stress impacting your ability to do your job well? So we gave an open answer format. We used Google Forms, and we can modify what we asked for output. So we took all of the responses and put them in a program called Wordle, and it made this little art feature for us. But what's cool about it is the words that are larger are the words that came up the most frequently. So the majority of people mentioned subplans, duties, feeling scattered, can't catch up, curriculum, duties again, meetings, assessment, duties. We decided to look at what people were saying was the biggest piece and why was that happening. And a lot of us had a lot more responsibilities placed on us during the pandemic. We were suddenly in charge of sanitizing all of the surfaces, making sure kids' masks were up, making sure that we had the right notes from the family about illness, contact tracing. A lot was placed on us. So even though you'll see later, some of these things have changed, people still feel that they're overwhelmed with the number of responsibilities and roles that they have to complete. We also asked which stress reduction solutions that were offered by our district were utilized. So what did people even attend? Just so that if you want this for ideas for your district, we had an opening day staff-led professional development. We had a potluck lunch. We've had catered lunches. We have an employee assistant program through our health insurance. The Sunshine Committee that we have in our school put bathroom care baskets with deodorant and room spray and just things that you might need to use. Snacks, candies, and treats and teas in the teacher lounges. Our superintendent got us food trucks on last day of school. That was quite popular. Somebody added in a fill-in that people are being kinder to each other. At some point we had massages and a yoga class. So this is just what people took advantage of. We also asked if you didn't utilize those supports, why didn't you? Most people said time or schedule conflicts. Some people said this time compared to last time, they just didn't need to access them. And some people said they had lack of knowledge about what was being offered in the first place. And then we also asked about more systematic changes. We've had a good amount of change in our school in terms of how the whole building runs. And overwhelmingly, people said having parent-teacher conferences during election day, we're doing that again this year. We didn't last year. It was very popular. A reduction in duties and more coverage. We now have two floating subs, and we also have an additional floating sub for IEP coverage. So special educator students aren't missing their service time while their special educator is in an IEP meeting. Again, people said being kind to each other, an improved schedule, PD time to get reports done, and then being able to come into the building earlier this year than usual to get their classroom set up helped reduce stress.
Sorry, it wasn't unmuting. Next, we asked what smaller scale wellness options would people want added in general to the school. So ideas of that were Keurig machines in the teacher's lounge, or specific PD presentations, new furniture in the staff lounges, things like that. So again, this Wordle has the biggest things as the most prevalent. And so time was the biggest thing. The trends we saw were more time is needed, time to get work done, collaborate with peers, for wellness activities, art classes, walks, meditation, different things like that. Many people would like yoga classes offered. Our staff feels it's important to have staff lounges that meet the needs of the teachers. Right now, our lounges are just a table with chairs and a refrigerator and a copier. And people would really like more fridge space, sinks, comfortable places to sit, maybe some vending machines or Keurig machines, just to make it feel a little bit more like a lounge. Our staff expressed that staff lunches being offered would be really nice for several reasons: appreciation of the staff, time to talk to each other, and just convenience overall. We live in a small town. There's not a lot of places surrounding us. If you forget your lunch, it's the cafeteria or nothing kind of thing. So just having those things. And then a few people even mentioned that just empathy or praise and encouragement goes a really long way. Next, we asked what realistic systematic changes that we can make to help reduce stress. And these are whole school changes. So planning time was huge. Fewer duties, fewer emails, better communication and organization systems were really important to our staff. Just respect, giving grace when mistakes are made or when time commitments aren't met. And then visible administration. So just having the administrators around the school, walking through the hallways, and flexible schedules were all brought up.
So we took some time to look through all of this survey data and sort of draw some conclusions and think about what could be some recommendations. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that we had is actually in our lifts course, we would always have a little catchphrase of like, small is the new big. And I think that that's a really helpful reminder that sometimes a really small thing, like just having some snacks when it's a professional development day, or just having a potluck lunch, those things that can feel very small actually have a really big impact. People feel cared for, and people have an opportunity to take care of their basic needs. And so then they're more available for some of the higher level needs that they need to be available, need to have as part of their job. So a lot of our short-term recommendations are like just having opportunities for simple wellness things, such as opportunities to listen to a speaker, or having opportunities where you can do a yoga class, or building time in to connect with colleagues, creating a system if you need to order a lunch, that you're not spending half of your lunch period trying to figure out what your lunch is. And then also communication, communicating what resources are available to staff, so that people can access any wellness resources that are being provided. And then thinking more long-term, this is where we have to think a little bit bigger and think about the systems, and that we all exist within a system, and how can we work in a bigger scale to create more humane environments for all of our educators and students. And so here is a place where we really need to think about, I know so many people mention time, that they don't feel like they have enough time. So it's really looking closely at schedules, looking closely at who is available within our staff, looking at our staffing and thinking about how can we maybe reconfigure some of our schedules to provide more time for everybody. Reducing the number of initiatives being put on people's plates. Sometimes it feels like there's a lot coming at people. And so just really helping prioritize what is our biggest priority for this year. What are the things that we can let go of? So that just doing some of that cognitive thinking on a grander scale and communicating it so that it's not as overwhelming to be trying to balance all of the initiatives that are happening. Simple things like scheduling parent-teacher conferences on a day when you can very easily, teachers are there, but you won't have the students. And just generally looking at our systems and making sure that we're kind of working efficiently so that we can have our collaborative meeting times, but not at another level, not creating more meetings, since time is always a premium. And then finally, these are just our contact information if anyone would like to reach out to us to learn more.
Great. Thank you very much, Sarah, Kate, Susan, and Melissa, for sharing your initiative on teacher stress and conversely, teacher care, which is very important. We also would like to thank not only all of our presenters this evening, but certainly the administrators who have seen fit to empower the teachers, because teacher empowerment is a big part of trauma sensitive schools. And so we want to extend some kudos to our administrators also. We'll now go into a Q&A session. And if people have questions, if you put your hand up, we'll be able to call upon you. And Joe and I will probably co-lead this. And Joe, if you had a question that you wanted to start things off with, maybe we could begin right there.
Yeah, a question that occurred to me, and I think for all of them, but it certainly occurred when I heard the first group from Weymouth speak, is what is the impact on the school community where this work to change, this work to bring safe and supportive strategies into the day-to-day operation of the school comes not from someone outside, but is basically generated from experts within the school? How does that impact in a positive and or not positive way?
I can try to answer that. I think that it matters greatly because, you know, educators make up the majority of the adults in the building, the teachers, and the support staff that are in the classrooms with students. And we happen to have administrators who are on board with this kind of work. But I think it does matter to our colleagues that it's not such a top-down approach to things, that it feels more organic and needed when it is their colleagues who are, you know, at least trying to build a coalition for change.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I can share a little bit about with our mindfulness work. Last year, when I began using this in my classroom, I had a colleague in third grade who I was talking to, and I said, "Hey, I think you would really like this." And I showed her my book, and she said, "You're right, I'm going to order it right away." So last year, there was a third grade teacher and myself in fourth grade. So this year we each have asked another friend to join us. So now we have 2 fourth grade teachers, and we have 2 third grade teachers. And since I've been working on this program and we've used the mindfulness in the classroom, I've now been motivated, of course, to write some grants. So I've been working locally with our educational foundation to work on writing grants to provide more opportunities, just even for the simple manual for some teachers, but some time for training, as well as maybe some setting up an outside day for little professional development to learn about how we can use this mindfulness in our own lives and with our students. And they really, of course, they take it from a colleague much easier.
Yes.
I think that's true. It seems that each group, in order to present any of their initiatives, would have to have overcome some barriers. Would anybody care to comment on some barrier to implementation that presented itself, and then more importantly, how you dealt with that?
I can speak to that, Sal. I'm the youngest of 8 children and just grew up in absolute chaos. And as an adult, you know, I was just always nervous and anxious and frightened when I didn't need to be. And that's why I got into special education, because I have the sensitivity you know, towards what it actually feels like to have shame wash over you, to have your frontal lobe go offline where you're not able to access the education that's being presented to you. And you know, when I started researching the trauma, it really just led me into mindfulness and meditation, and just really bringing it into my life. And I just can't tell you how much it has helped me. And so to be able to work with students who are just incredibly dysregulated, and to be able to offer something like that, that we can do it anywhere, has been wonderful.
Thank you, Shelley. We appreciate you sharing that. Susan, you had a comment.
Well, you were asking about barriers to implementation. So two things that came to mind were, one, we wanted to be really sensitive about, because we were asking a survey, we wanted it to be anonymous. We didn't want anyone to feel like the information, they would be singled out, but we also wanted good information we could share with our principal. We had a little bit of pushback at first. We didn't want the good things that are already in place that people work really hard on to feel like they weren't important or weren't appreciated. But we tried to keep it really separate. The things that were already in place that people did on their own, we left out of it. So that was one kind of barrier. We had a little administrative pushback, but it worked out. And then another piece that we haven't seen yet, but one of the things that we noticed in trends was people want more bodies in the building. They want more people to take on duties and take on roles and responsibilities so they can focus on teaching or whatever educational piece they're in charge of. And I think that's why we tried to lean towards, like, how can we work harder, like smarter and not harder? So how can we make those meetings be on a different day so that's less stressful for you? How can we not have 3 meetings when it could just be 1, or it could be an email? So those are some of the barriers, is knowing that we aren't necessarily going to be able to hire a bunch of staff, but looking at how can we do this in a smart way.
Thanks very much. Let me also point out to folks that Nick Suchecki has shared another resource related to mindful breathing in the chat. So you might want to check that out also. I can see the time is coming to a close, and I'd like to reintroduce our director of the Center for Inclusive Education to sort of do a little wrap up and commentary. Patricia.
Thank you, Sal. Thank you, presenters. What a wonderful event. Good conversation, and we're hoping that we can continue this conversation. So first, I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. This convening brought together different educators out in the field to share what is working for them, and we want to thank them for joining us tonight. And moreover, we'd like to congratulate you all as the 2022 Impact Award recipients. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. And we really appreciate all your contributions and want to recognize your service to the children as you're developing trauma-sensitive schools. So we have ongoing convenings. Our next tentative dates are January 27th, March 31st, and June 2nd. I'd like to share a poll that in order to get your thoughts on what is it that you would like to hear in our upcoming convenings. So the poll should jump out in front of you, and there are several ideas that we've brainstormed. If you have an idea that's not on this poll, would you please add it to the chat? We'd like to gather as many ideas as possible. You can check as many of the ideas that you're interested in and then hit submit. And then add ideas to the chat, please. I am going just to share the results. If you haven't finished, keep going and hit submit, and they will still come on. So here are some of the results. Wonderful. If you're curious about what we do and would like to join our network, hear what's coming up, please put your phone up to this QR code and join our LIFTS networking hub. I will also put in the chat the UR code. Sal, Joe, any last words?
Joe?
Grateful to all the presenters. It was just incredible information. Thank you so much.
Same here. We're very appreciative. For a long time, we have wanted to have voices from the field, so to speak, to have practitioners hear from practitioners about the work. And this was the first time we were ever able to do it. And I want to commend all of our presenters and their schools.
And we have recorded tonight's event and we'll put the presentations onto the community hub. And so if you want to go back and revisit the presentations for tonight and for some of our past convenings, please feel free to do so. Thank you all for coming.
Patricia, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Is there a password to get into the community hub?
There is a password. It's LIFTS, LIFTS.
Thank you.
And if you don't want to be on a mailing list and you just want to look around, you just click the little X on the top.
Okay.
But I invite you all to take a look.
Okay.
And please join us. It's a wonderful network.
I would love to. I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you.